Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Andrea Rinkus. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you. Everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
And whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Even better, all of our guests are local small business owners who you can actually talk to and work with. You can learn more about today's guest and connect with hundreds of other health and wellness professionals through our informative and easy-to-use directory at motherhoodalliance.com.
Before we get started, keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personal healthcare advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any changes based on the podcast content.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Are you ready to help your family thrive? Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. We are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 4-episode series with Abbey McLaughlin, who is a registered nurse and international board-certified lactation consultant. She also joined us with her sidekick, 5-week-old Henry, so if you're someone who melts at the periodic sounds of newborn grunts and squeaks, you're in for a treat. You may hear him in the background just a little bit, and he is so sweet. Abbey is the owner of Mal's Milky in Appleton, Wisconsin, and she aims to empower families by providing personalized lactation care and education, allowing them to achieve their feeding goals. Like many members of the Motherhood Alliance, Abbey discovered her calling and established her business after experiencing a challenge for herself, and in her case, it was a traumatic first breastfeeding experience with her first daughter, Mallory. Abbey is a wealth of knowledge regarding all topics related to feeding tiny humans, including breastfeeding, bottle refusal, premature and medically complicated infants, latching and positioning, prenatal education, and so much more. In this 4-part series, we take deep dives into multiple topics, including what does a lactation consultant do and not do in episode 1, liquid gold, the benefits and surprising additional uses of breast milk in episode 2, feeding newborns, what to expect and tips for success in episode 3, and finally, weaning from breast and bottle, when to wean and practical tips for success. Abbey offers multiple programs and packages, as well as a free prenatal consultation for anyone who wants to ask questions and connect with her before baby is born. But I do want to mention a special promo she is offering Motherhood Alliance listeners. You can get $50 off of her life cycle package, which, side note, I would have loved to have this when my kids were little, and I would highly recommend it. But you can get the $50 off her life cycle package by using the code MMW3, all capitals, for the MMW. So MMW3 to take advantage of that special offer. Let's dive into today's conversation with Abbey and baby Henry.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We're here with Abbey from Mal's Milky Way. We're happy to have you back. Today, we are going to be talking about newborn feeding expectations, and this is going to be a pretty hot topic. Obviously, moms really need to know about how newborn feedings go, their expectations, and we got a lot of great stuff to cover. So in the first episode, we had talked about how you specialize, especially in helping moms prepare for breastfeeding during pregnancy. So what are some things to start this off with? What can they do during pregnancy to prepare their breasts, prepare their minds for breastfeeding?
Sure. And a lot of people are not going to like my answer because there's not much you can do specifically to your breasts. But really the most important thing is empowering yourself, educating yourself, finding that support and knowing who to call, finding support in friends and family, and just like coming up with a plan, or just mentally preparing. Like if you're the kind of gal that doesn't want to have a plan and just wants to see how things go, just preparing for that, because the newborn expectations in general, no matter how you decide to feed your baby, whether it's your first or your 5th baby, they're all different, right? So we just need to be prepared for the newborn period in general and just mentally prepping for that.
I feel like when I had my first, if somebody had told me how uncomfortable it was, like with their nipples and things, like you have to have that perspective, like, hey, your nipples have never done this before either.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to take a little time. And like you said, there can be a little bit of pain at first, but it shouldn't last.
Yeah. And learning how to give yourself grace is really important because we're learning too. And even if we've had babies and breastfeed successfully before, like I said, every baby's different and we're a different mom every time we have a new baby. So just learning to give ourselves grace if things don't go exactly how we expect it to.
Yeah. And speaking of pain, is there like a certain level of pain, maybe initially or after a while, that is tolerable? Or what do you say about that?
So my golden rule with a lot of my clients is like, give it a good week. So like you said, we're new to this too. And babies are learning. It's not going to be a picture perfect latch every single time. So with that, we might have a little pain. What I tell my clients to do is, okay, can we take a deep breath? If it feels pinchy after about a minute, is the pain subsiding or does it still feel pinchy? If so, that's when we want to redo the latch. If it subsides, it's probably a sign of a good latch and we have a little bit of nipple trauma from previous 4 latches. So I always give it like about a week. And if we have significant damage and it's getting worse and not improving at all, that's when I say, okay, we need help.
Yeah. And so what are some common challenges and what are those common challenges? What are the symptoms that you might be getting this pain from?
Number one, a shallow latch is always indicative of or a cause of nipple pain. And a lot of times it's really easily fixed with simple positioning. Apparently he thinks that's funny. So with easy positioning too, a lot of times, especially like in the middle of the night, we just like want our babies to eat, right? When they're screaming, and we will just like, okay, however you're going to eat, just do it. And we just will suffer through it, which is a lot of times what I see moms do. And I always say, I promise it is worth it to teach and create those good habits off the bat, even if that means redoing the latch 3 or 4 times in the feeding, but just establishing those good habits off the bat.
If someone is experiencing nipple pain or they have some trauma already, what do you recommend to help heal that? Because they're feeding every 3 hours still or so, roughly, or even more with cluster feeding. So how do you, when it's constantly getting used, how can you also give it time to heal?
So obviously making sure that you have a good latch is the number one, because when you have an appropriate latch, your nipples should not be pressing against your baby's hard palate, which is really what causes the damage. So ensuring you have a good latch is number one. Number two, I always say switch up the positioning. So your baby's not latching in the exact same spot every single time. And two, it's hard to heal those wet wounds, which our nipples are always wet when we're breastfeeding. So I always suggest like leaving them open to air at least a couple times, especially in that newborn period. We shouldn't have a lot of visitors. We're just chilling at home, mostly in our diapers and robes anyway. So let those puppies breathe, right?
You just brought me back to memories here.
So walk around in your robe, let your nipples air out. And it feels good to not like have a bra or anything rub against them. They do make like those little shells if you feel like you want to wear a bra. Silverettes are super popular on the market right now. Silver has a lot of healing properties in them, which is great. But I've seen a lot of moms like overuse them where they're constantly wearing them 24/7 and then they're just sitting in the dark, wet environment, which is not great for healing. So just making sure that you're letting them dry out in between is awesome.
What about like nipple shields? Like when I had my my first, he was 37 weeks. He had a very hard time latching. I was introduced to a nipple shield. I had a lactation consultant who was like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, but it works for now. I hope it doesn't last forever. And I know some lactation consultants get a little bit about those because I know they could be something that moms might really, or babies too, might really latch onto, for lack of better terms,
Literally.
I guess, literally. So what are your opinions on nipple shields? How helpful are they? How long do you really use them for, if you need them at all?
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those that's
Yeah.
Because I think really it's a Band-Aid to a problem. So I don't always love when they're tossed out like candy to just like, here, your baby's going to eat, which is great. Our babies need to eat, but they can actually more times than not cause more harm than good. A lot of times they can impede mom's supply because the baby's not directly like stimulating their nipple. And sometimes it makes babies like lazy feeders. And I think a lot of times they're used for like an incorrect reason or not a reason that would be helpful. Like I said, putting a Band-Aid on a problem. So if you're using it for nipple pain, like what's causing the nipple pain? Let's dig into that. Can we figure out what's actually happening instead of you just literally covering your nipple and hoping it heals? So I always love to say like, and for anatomy reasons too, it's called breastfeeding for a reason, right? We don't want them just latching onto our nipple. So a lot of times using a nipple shield kind of creates that shallow latch because they will literally just grab the nipple shield and that's it. And they're really hard to wean off of, which maybe you remember.
I did experience that a little bit, but yeah.
I also remember you being like, petrified that you would forget it and then you wouldn't be able to feed your baby
I
or
had
they wouldn't
several
latch.
laying around the house where I would tuck one in my bralette or whatever, and then I would have one. Yeah, he
Living in
he
the
wasn't
diaper
on
bag.
it forever, but then I was freaking out because I thought I was a horrible mom, and I couldn't feed my own baby because I needed a nipple guard or whatever it was, and so it was challenging. Yeah, but I'm glad that I realized it wasn't going to be a forever thing too.
For sure. And ideally, hopefully it's not. And they can be really handy tools if they're used correctly. Most times that I pull them out for is a baby with low tone. So a baby like a NICU baby, or a baby that had a little bit of birth trauma, or a baby with a condition like Down syndrome where they need to be quote unquote lazy feeders because they don't have that extra oral stamina to be able to breastfeed at the breast. So sometimes those nipple shields can be really helpful. And then just chatting with the mom like, hey, do you want this to be a long-term thing? If you're cool with that, good for you. And if you want to be able to wean off of it, like, okay, let's come up with a plan so we know what to expect when that time comes.
What are some of your top tips to have a comfortable breastfeeding experience? I think about Drea and I have, prenatal, postpartum, specialized personal training background. So I often think about how women are always hunched over in their shoulders. And so much of what you're doing during that early newborn time is hunched over. So what are your hot tips for actual positions and helping with the breastfeeding experience since you're doing it so often?
Yeah, as I sit here correcting my posture, holding Henry. Definitely, I love reclined feeding. It is my utmost favorite position. With my 2 new offices, I ensured that I had furniture that would allow to teach reclined or laid back feeding because it's so super important. It's really awkward the first 18 times you try to do it because you have zero control over your baby's head. But in essence, without a photo, it's really just picture skin to skin in their nursing, which is great because once you get them latched, you're essentially hands free and you're laying down, not supporting their weight. And then they're not directly on your belly either. So it's great for C-section moms because then they're a little off to the side. And it's just great for our own healing and saves us a trip to the chiropractor.
What do you think about boppy pillows?
I personally don't love them. I think for some moms, they're great. But let's be honest, majority of moms after we have babies, our boobs hang lower than the boppy, right? So I feel like they just get in the way.
I never had that problem.
So sometimes I think they can just get in the way because they're so firm. I personally love just grabbing small throw pillows and blankets because then you can shove them in and mold them to exactly what you need them to be.
I feel like when I had my boppy, I did have one, but I had to stuff pillows underneath it to bring it up higher because
Sure.
I don't have the problem either of boobs being very large.
So I think a really important question a lot of moms are asking themselves with breastfeeding, because they don't have little lines on a bottle to know how much their baby ate, is how do moms and families know that their baby is getting enough?
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the biggest fears that moms have postpartum, because you can't measure and it is really hard. So a lot of things that I tell moms to look for is back to that great latch. Okay, are we having pain? Babies are going to transfer milk better with a good latch. So always start there. If your baby's latched, a lot of times my lactation consultant training will tell me that the baby should end the feeding, but 99% of the time babies will fall asleep at the breast. So how do we know, okay, was it actually good feeding or did they fall asleep on the job? So things to look for is really great jaw motion back by the ear. In the first couple days before your milk really comes in, you probably won't hear any swallows because it's such a small volume. But after your milk comes in, hopefully you hear swallows. If you don't worry because sometimes it's tricky to hear. Sometimes you can see your baby swallowing. And I'm not a clock watcher for nursing. I think babies have snacks and large meals just like we do. So it's totally normal if your baby nurses for 5 minutes and sometimes for 30. If you are continually nursing your baby for longer than 30 minutes, to me, that's a red flag. So I would watch for that. So keep it under 30 and it's okay if it's different every time. Watch for those good jaw motions. When your baby falls asleep, are you able to unlatch them and will they stay asleep? That's a really great indicator. Okay, that's a satisfied baby. If you unlatch them and they're immediately alert, shaking their head, bopping back up and down, that's a baby who fell asleep on the job. So some good tips if you feel like your baby is regularly falling asleep and not getting everything that they need is to gently compress your breast, get that milk flowing for them. Because sometimes that will wake them up and be like, hey, you're here to work.
Yeah, I think that's part of a really good reason why to go to you too, because you can teach that technique as well. Because that was something I remember my lactation consultant taught me, is that hand expression, and that was really helpful. So yeah.
Wet diapers too, right? Is that another one?
Yes. Diapers and weight gain are another great thing to watch for. So I follow the day of life rule for diapers. So from birth to 24 hours, you should have 1 wet diaper. From 24 to 48, 2 wet diapers. And from 48 to 72 hours, 3 wet diapers. By day 4, we love to see milk really coming in, volume increasing. So that's when you want to see like 6+ diapers a day. If you have anything less than that, that's when you should be reaching out to your baby's provider and working hand in hand with a lactation consultant. And for poops, the first poop is that sticky, tarry meconium. Some babies will poop it out right after birth, and then you might not see them poop until they have like those yellow seedy poops. Sometimes you'll see like the nice green, transition-y, still meconium kind of poops until your milk comes in. And then really once your milk comes in, you want to see like the golden rule is 4 yellow seedy diapers by day 4 of life. After that, for the first couple of weeks, you're going to feel like they're pooping every time they eat. And then it's very normal for as babies grow, they don't poop all the time anymore. So it is normal for poops to slow down.
As someone's observing, these different things that you said, that's going to give them some closure on knowing that their baby is getting enough, but maybe they're still a little bit worried. What are your tips for increasing your breast milk supply?
Sure. So I always want to tell people to use caution when trying to increase supply, because there are repercussions for having an oversupply too, even though that's pretty idolized on social media nowadays, having the giant freezer stash, but it's not required to feed our baby, right? But having an oversupply can actually lead to like GI upset in your baby, can put us at higher risk for mastitis, things like that. So I always tell people it's okay to be a just enougher. If we are continually not making enough for our baby and we need to increase supply, other things that we can do is like the Haka would be the first tool that I would pull out. So if you don't have a low supply, I tell moms not to use it because it would make you a crazy oversupplier. But it's a really great, easy tool to throw on the opposite breast while you're nursing to create that extra stim, because it tells your body that you're nursing 2 babies at once, because it does have a pretty wicked suction to it. So that's a really simple way without feeling like you're triple feeding, as people call it, where you're nursing them, pumping, then bottle feeding to top them off kind of thing, which if you have to do that to increase your supply, that would be the next step. But I definitely wouldn't try to majorly increase supply without support of a lactation consultant.
So on that same line, pumping between feedings?
Pumping between feedings would definitely make moms an oversupplier. If you have a low supply, it's a great, nice tool to use, but I definitely recommend having another support person. Like, is your partner able to bottle feed while you pump kind of thing? Because otherwise it can feel really overwhelming to nurse, pump, bottle feed, and then it's like time to start it all again.
Speaking of bottle feeding, do you have favorite bottle brand or bottle types for newborns?
I do, and I'm not endorsed by these brands, but I do love them.
Yet.
Listen up, brands.
I love the Even Flow Balance bottle, and there's also a pigeon nipple that you can purchase. All these things can be found on Amazon. Even Flow Balance a lot of times is in stock at Target, which is cool. Otherwise, Lactation Hub is a website where you can order these parts and pieces from, which is cool. And the new Spectra pumps actually come with a really nice looking bottle nipple on them, which would be great if you don't have to purchase anything extra, because that comes right with the pump. And then you can bottle feed right what you pump into, which is cool.
That's nice.
So I love those.
What about tips for those itty bitties, NICU graduates? I know, Drea, your first child was born at what, 5 pounds, 10 ounces?
Yeah, he was 37 weeks exactly. Barely, premature. He wasn't premature, but 3 hours before he would have been considered premature.
So not a NICU grad, but those little itty bitties.
Yeah. And honestly, like even if you have a NICU baby, I think really focusing on all the positive experiences, which might look like you get to do skin to skin while you pump for them. And that might be what that looks like in the NICU for you. Or if you get them to breast and they get to smell and lick your nipple while you're tube feeding them, that's a huge win for a NICU baby. Just like really creating those positive experiences that associate the breast with a full belly, and just really taking those baby steps. So if you have a NICU baby and then you're kind of progressing up the line, you want to encourage them to lick and smell and even just like a little suckle, not focusing on a perfect latch, because at that point they probably aren't even drinking for milk and it's just to associate and to soothe, which is great. And so really just focusing on those small little progressions and really listening to your baby is so super important. They will tell you when they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed or when they're pooped and need a break. Really just giving them the time to grow and mature is wonderful. And then finding support on how to meet your needs as a mom as well.
And I mean, I'm thankful I did not have to experience a NICU with either of my kids, but I can imagine that takes the overwhelm of having a newborn up 15 notches, where you're just so overwhelmed, so exhausted, worried in a lot of times. What extra support can you give to someone who has a baby in the NICU? Or do you have any programs that you can reference them to?
Yes, I actually have a NICU grad program that kind of ties into my NICU background, which is wonderful because that's where my heart first started after Mallory with lactation. So it's really great to support those people. And it's pretty rare for babies to leave the NICU exclusively breastfeeding. So if that's the mom's goal, I actually recently just helped a client. Baby's already like 4 months old and now they're exclusively breastfeeding for the first time, which is so cool. So just to know, like, it's possible, your journey just looks a little different. And having that support when you go home to like, okay, we've been strictly bottle feeding. We know the amount they're getting. And now we're transitioning to those worries about how do we know they're getting enough at the breast. So supporting them in that. And my program looks like a weekly visit for the first month after they're home, just to like check in on weights and make sure things are going well for everybody. So that's just really nice to have that ongoing support after discharge.
Okay, so how do I know when to reach out for help? Like if I'm having issues, how do I know to reach out for help? And how do I reach out for help to you? Like what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. So the best way to get a hold of me is I have a lot of moms will just like message me off social media. And while I can't give medical advice over social media, it's a great way that we can just like schedule an appointment or you can learn about next steps. Otherwise, email or number, you can actually text me on my business number, which is really helpful for a lot of moms. So feel free to do that as well. But when to reach out is the first feeling that something feels off. And whether you're a first-time mom and aren't sure and you don't even know if something is actually wrong, but you just don't feel like it's right, please reach out, because that's my favorite thing to do is just be somebody's cheerleader and be like, you're doing awesome. Everything looks great. And if not, reaching out early at those like first signs of this doesn't feel good to me, that prevents all those emergencies that we talked about. It's way easier to recover a low supply that we can catch right away. Or if a baby has an oral tie, something like that, can we catch it early and prevent a lot of that nipple damage, things like that. So the earlier you reach out, the more likely you'll have success at meeting your goals, because a lot of times myself that cried through feedings for the first 4 or 5 months, we want to give up because it's so hard. It's so stressful and it's mentally draining. So reaching out for help in the beginning and preventing some of those burnout things is really great just for duration of breastfeeding, for our own mental health, and for the success for our goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you're pregnant right now, reach out ahead of time.
Absolutely.
So when you're so if somebody's pregnant right now, when should they be reaching out to you? When they're pregnant?
Whenever they'd like. I actually do a free initial consult for expecting moms, just so they can learn about the life cycle package, learn what things look like, and then we can just kind of get to know each other and chat. But I've had moms reach out to me like the second they take their test. I've had moms reach out to me at 37 weeks. So it's really up to you and how much prep work that you feel you need to do.
Okay, perfect.
And you also have a breastfeeding prep course that's going to help moms enter into birth and having their newborn and feel a lot more confident. So at what point during pregnancy do you recommend they attend that?
So I love to recommend that they do the breastfeeding course like towards the end of second trimester. And then I'm also partnered with a childbirth educator, and we do the Motherhood Your Way series monthly.
Awesome. You have so many awesome resources. How incredible is this? If you guys have any questions about these resources, we will put links to the show notes, as well as you can contact Abbey directly. So this was a great episode. We covered so much, and I'm sure there'd be a lot more questions coming from regarding newborn feeding expectations. So I hope you guys know that Abbey is ready and available to help you with any concerns or questions that you have. Thanks for joining us, Abbey.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.